I read reports recently that the Church of England is starting to drop the word church from many of its new initiatives. The report reads, dioceses have jettisoned the use of the word church in describing the new things being established in their parishes. In the past 10 years, about 900 new things have been started. None of the 11 dioceses used the term church as its main description of such developments. I think it's quite fitting that the Church of England is dropping the word church, because it seems to me the truth of the matter is it's not really been a church for quite some time now. And I don't mean that in some flippant or casually dismissive way. I mean that in quite a clinical, biblically defined way. Jesus said to the people who believed in him, "You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings." As soon as you willfully depart from Jesus' teachings, you are no longer Jesus' disciples. By his own definition, you are no longer Jesus' church. Now, with that in mind, in recent years, the C of E has often willfully departed from Jesus' teachings. They've decided to bless same-sex marriage, admit gay clergy. They pushed for God to be referred to using non-binary or female pronouns. They've affirmed current trans ideology for even children as young as 5, and repeatedly made it clear that they are willing to jettison biblical teaching in order to conform to the ideas, the culture, and the spirit of the age, whatever that may look like at the present time. Indeed, at the Synod in 2023, where they discussed how to advance all of these so-called progressive yet anti-biblical ideas, the Washington Times rightly said they were basically considering the abandonment of Christianity itself. Now, in truth, the Church of England has always been a bit like this. I remember reading William Wilberforce's biography by William Hague some years ago, where he says the Christianity which Wilberforce had encountered with his immediate family in Hull, so this is going back to the 1700s, had been of the classic Church of England variety, a necessary and formal requirement for active and respectable citizens, but not usually intrusive or demanding. So in other words, the Church of England has always been for hundreds of years the place of the lukewarm Christian, the home of the cultural Christian, the person who goes to church because it's the respectable thing to do, but doesn't necessarily believe it or actually hold to its teachings. A fact that was also noted in this BBC sitcom, Yes Minister, back in the 1980s.
What's a modernist in the Church of England?
Well, the word modernist is code for non-believer.
You mean an atheist?
No, Prime Minister. An atheist clergyman couldn't continue to draw his stipend. So, when they stop believing in God, they call themselves modernists.
How could the Church of England suggest an atheist as Bishop of Bury St Edmunds?
Well, very easily. The Church of England is primarily a social organisation, not a religious one.
Is it?
Oh, yes. It's part of the rich social fabric of this country. So bishops need to be the sort of chaps who speak properly, know which knife and fork to use.
I don't want Canon Stanford. What am I to do?
Well, you could turn both candidates down, but that would be exceptional and not advised.
Even though one of them wants to get God out of the Church of England and the other wants to get the Queen out?
Well, the Queen is inseparable from the Church of England.
Is she? What about God?
I think he's what's called an optional extra.
C.S. Lewis attended an Anglican church in his lifetime, but when he saw the priest coming out with these liberal, progressive, anti-biblical messages designed to fit with the culture of the age, he wrote a letter to ask priests to start being honest. He wrote that in the Church of England, we often hear from our priests doctrine, which is not Christianity. He said that often it's so liberal, it's not really Christian, that lines must be drawn. And if priests really wanted to go beyond those lines of orthodoxy, they should simply find a new profession. He said, we never doubted that your unorthodox opinions were honestly held. What we complain of is your continuing ministry after you've come to hold them. We always knew that a man who makes his living as a paid agent of the Conservative Party may honestly change his views and honestly become a communist. What we deny is that he can honestly continue to be a Conservative agent and receive money from one party while he now supports the policy of another. It seems to me that there are a lot of people in the Church of England who don't honestly believe, who don't stay faithful to Jesus' teaching, who have no intention of ever doing so. They'll jettison the Bible at the drop of a hat to conform to the current trendy ideology of the time. And yet they want to continue in the ministry because they want to reap the rewards of a life within the church. They want the honor, the money, the status, and the generous pension. Now, this reminds me of a time in Israel's history in the Old Testament when Israel and its priests had also turned away from God, instead putting their faith in the ideologies of their day. There's a lot of parallels in this passage. And listen to what God says to them through the prophet Jeremiah here. He says, "What did your ancestors find wrong with me that led them to stray so far from me? They worshipped worthless idols only to become worthless themselves. And when I brought you into a fruitful land to enjoy its bounty and goodness, you defiled my land and corrupted the possession I'd promised you. The priest did not ask, 'Where's the Lord?' Those who taught my word ignored me." Let's say that again. Those who taught my word ignored me. In the ESV, it says, "Those who handle the law did not know me. My people have done two evil things. They have abandoned me, the fountain of living water, and they have dug for themselves cracked cisterns that can hold no water at all." Now, that's a pretty relevant passage for our day. That's a pretty relevant passage for the Church of England. Those who claim to teach God's word don't actually know him. In fact, they ignore him. They ignore his word. Instead of putting their faith in God, in the God who provided so much blessing in the past, they are instead putting their faith in the worthless ideas of the age, cracked cisterns that simply hold no water. And in worshipping these worthless things, they themselves are becoming worthless. In the past 50 years, Church of England attendance has shrunk by over 80%. And contrary to that, the churches that are growing today are the ones who are adhering tightly to God's word. The churches who are willing to be courageous. The churches who are willing to stand against the cultural tide, not go with it. The ones who are willing to proclaim God's word in the midst of all of this. Those are the ones that are succeeding today. So, Church of England, you have a choice here, it seems to me. Either continue to be cowardly, continue to be compromised, continue to conform to the spirit of the age and simply fade away into nothingness, or reform yourselves and come to the fountain of living water. If you don't do that, you simply don't have a future. In fact, it's estimated the Scottish equivalent, the Church of Scotland, who are just as lukewarm, may completely disappear as early as 2030. God's true church is going to prevail. Those who stay faithful to Jesus' teaching are going to advance. His true disciples are going to go from strength to strength. The gates of hell won't be able to stand against them. But you have to choose whether you want to be a part of that. If you don't, then it's right that you stop calling yourself a church, because quite simply, you're not one.